قصيا فأجاءها المخاض إلى جذع النخلة قالت يا ليتني مت قبل هذا وكنت نسيا منسيا فناداها من تحتها ألا تحزني قد جعل ربك تحتك سريا وهزي إليك بجذع النخلة تساقط عليك رطبا جنيا فكلي واشربي وقري عينا فإما ترين من البشر أحدا فقولي إني نذرت للرحمن صوما فلن أكلم اليوم إنسيا فأتت به قومها تحمله قالوا يا مريم لقد جئت شيئا فريا يا أخت هارون ما كان أبوك امرأ سوء وما كانت أمك بغيا فأشارت إليه قالوا كيف نكلم من كان في المهد صبيا قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا وجعلني مباركا أينما كنت وأوصاني بالصلاة والزكاة ما دمت حيا صدق الله العظيم. جزاكم الله خير. Inshallah, we're going to begin our program now. Our speaker for tonight would like to introduce himself, inshallah.
Testing. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. I'm very happy to be here with you tonight. And normally I stand, but we've been in 25 states in the last 2 months, speaking every day except for 2 days, 3-4 times. And I'm 73 and I'm getting a little bit tired. But this has been one of the greatest blessings of my life, to be able to do a road trip, again at my age, with the help of Taj. Taj, are you here? Okay, Taj Al-Haj Hussein. He's the brother of my associate, Asa Al-Haj Hussein. I call him Jesus. Jesus is at another mosque tonight. And Taj, his first name means corona. It means corona, crown. And so he's here. And I'm very grateful to Taj. He received Driver of the Year award just 2 days ago. And we're very grateful to have him driving us all over the United States. And he's also a very professional cameraman. So he may be taking a few pictures because we won't get a picture of me in Corona, California. My life began in Charleston, South Carolina. South Carolina is one of the 13 original colonies of the United States. Charleston is very important because the first shot fired during the Revolution against England was fired from Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina. Charleston has been a very important part of history. My father was in the Navy there. He was a Navy, what was then called the Navy Air. It's now called Coast Guard Auxiliary. But he died in a plane crash 3 months after I was born. But before he died, he was in the hospital 6 months. I was born the 3rd month. Then for the last 3 months of his life, he prayed and asked God to use me. He gave me to Allah. And my life from then became a series of miracles, which brings me to Saudi Arabia. At the age of 3, my mother moved with my 2 older brothers and sister and I to Jefferson, Georgia, her hometown. Population 1,800 people. Main industry was a cotton mill, like in Faisalabad. Okay? Everybody worked in the cotton mill. And there she would take me every Sunday to First Baptist Church of Jefferson. Listen closely to the next part of the story. In that church was a library. All churches, or most churches, have libraries. The children can go to the library and check out a children's book. She'd take me every Sunday after the service to the library. Ms. Miriam was the librarian. Miriam Moon. And I would go to the library, and she'd let me look at all the books. The one book I got over and over and over again was called The God of Abraham. It was a beautiful book. Had pictures of the Holy Land, full color pictures, camels, sheep, men in long white robes. And my mother would tell me the story about Abraham, how he had to leave his mother and father because they were worshiping idols. And these idols, of course, this was conflict against the nature of God. Alhamdulillah, my mother would stop right there and she'd say, Sami, 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 look into my eyes. Look, pay attention. When you're older, you must pray to the God of Abraham, to Abraham's God, because there's only one God. She was an amazing woman. I was taught to be a Muslim at First Baptist Church in Jefferson, Georgia. You know, about 80 to 100 million American children, Americans today, when they were children, were taught to pray to the God of Abraham. They were told there was only one God. And the words in the Old Testament and the words read by Asa in the New Testament of the Bible, behold, O Israel, The Lord your God is one. This is an amazing statement. All my life, these words echoed in my mind. My mother sent me off to Bob Jones Academy, a boarding school, a Christian high school. There were only a few at that time. They didn't have them in every town like they do today. I went to Greenville, South Carolina to high school. I graduated from Bob Jones Academy with Christian Leadership Award and School Spirit Award, top awards. And I was always in the streets of Charlotte, North Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, and other places talking about Allah as I understood him from the teaching of my mother. It was an incredible, wonderful situation for me. I went on to Christian college, again graduating with honors, called the President's Award. The president of this Fundamentalist Presbyterian College chose me for the President's Award, which meant that I was the model student at Shelton College. I went on to Faith Theological Seminary to study in graduate school, courses in theology. Then to Liberty Baptist Theological Seminary in Lynchburg, Virginia. And from there on to California Graduate School of Theology in Glendale, California. I would ask my graduate school professors, can you please explain to me, first in high school I asked to Mr. Lang, can you explain to me the Trinity? Mr. Lang, he thought for a minute, he says it's sort of like an egg. There's an egg shell, inside the egg there's egg white, there's egg yellow, there are 3 parts to the egg, there's only one egg. I said, you mean God is like an egg? He said, no, that's not what I meant. In college, I asked another professor, please, can you explain in simple terms to me, Trinity? And he would say, well, he had a banana on his desk. He peeled the banana. He saw the part inside. He squeezed it, and it came apart in 3 parts. He says, you see, there's 3 parts to this banana on the inside, but it's only one banana. Oh, God is like a banana? Oh, no. Finally, I get to Faith Theological Seminary, and I asked my teacher there, can you please explain the Trinity to me, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, in simple terms? I received my first honest answer. He said, it can't be explained. It's a mystery. Man doesn't understand it. So the Trinity was always, in my mind, questionable. After graduating from seminary, I was married to Jana Luptakova of Czechoslovakia. She had been involved with me in smuggling Bibles into Eastern Europe. I smuggled thousands of Bibles during the conflict into Eastern Europe and to the Soviet Union. I was arrested in the Soviet Union when I was 21 for smuggling Bibles. They were illegal. From there, we were married. 5 years later, my wife came to the United States, and we were working in Washington, D.C. with Christian Solidarity International. I was an ordained pastor, not to pastor churches, but to work with nonprofit humanitarian organizations. My work took me into relief and development, into Pakistan, working with the Mujahideen refugees coming out of Pakistan during the Soviet occupation. I was working in human rights in the British Parliament, Canadian Parliament, and also with the U.S. Congress. I would organize U.S. congressmen to travel abroad with me, and I would take Canadian and British parliamentarians with me as well. We would meet with foreign heads of state on behalf of religious prisoners of conscience. For instance, Romania. Nicolae Ceausescu was the communist dictator. He was a ruthless individual. If anyone objected to any of his plans, he didn't mind taking them out, killing them, or they would disappear in prison. 156 religious prisoners were in Romanian prisons. Among them were Christians, Muslims, and Jews. I had legislation before the U.S. Congress. I put pressure on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, House Committee on Foreign Affairs, and also in the Canadian and British parliaments. Ran a full-page ad to Nicolae Ceausescu in the New York Times. You see, he wouldn't meet with me if I went there alone. He hated me. But if I had 3 members of Congress and 2 members of the parliament sitting there with me, he had to meet with me. All 156 prisoners were released. We had prisoners released in the Soviet Union. It was against the law to believe in God, to be a leader, to try to convince others to believe in God. Many prisoners were released in the Soviet Union, including Russian Orthodox, evangelical Christians, and Jews, as well as Muslims in the Caucasus. Now, I went from doing this work, and that work was done not only in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union, but also in Latin America, in totalitarian dictatorships. We worked there, as well as in Nepal, which was a Hindu kingdom at the time. There were Muslims being imprisoned there and beaten in the streets. We weren't there. In China, many people were released from prison because of the pressure we put upon the Chinese government. China wanted to normalize its relationships with the United States. In order to do that, they had to release religious prisoners of conscience. We turned a blind eye today on China for its treatment of Muslims there today. Millions being incarcerated, millions being imprisoned, put in brainwashing camps, being sexually abused, millions being tortured simply because they believe in God. I went from doing human rights work, I took a break from that, to working in Annapolis, Maryland, which is the capital of the state of Maryland. I was the head of the Democratic Party in Annapolis. I was well respected in the city. I was elected to the Annapolis City Council. They called me alderman. I was very activist. I was an activist working on behalf of the environment, Chesapeake Bay, large body of water which divided this state of Maryland. 60% dead from phosphate fertilizer runoffs and other pollution. We tried to bring it back to life again. I called it creation care, caring for God's creation. We worked on behalf of many other issues, including racial reconciliation. I took a group from Annapolis to the Kunta Kinte Festival in the Gambia. That's in West Africa, surrounded by the state of Senegal. It was a very interesting time. I went up the river on a small boat and we landed in Jufri, small city. Kunta Kinte, who is a legendary figure who came to the United States on a slave ship, is said to have lived in that village. I wanted to see the museum there. They had a slavery museum. I walked inside the museum and there was a big poster. It was an advertisement from the Annapolis Capital newspaper dated 17 75. And I looked at it, and it was advertising a boatload of slaves, 160 slaves, who were being auctioned at the Annapolis City dock the next day. People being auctioned like cattle. It was a very interesting situation, but you know, it made it very real to me as a member of the Annapolis City Council. After seeing that, I had the city administrator with me on that trip, and I asked Bob Agee, I said, Bob, did we ever apologize for the city council's participation in 250 years of slavery and nearly 100 years of segregation, forced segregation? Thank you, brother. Thank you. "250 years of slavery, nearly 100 years of segregation. Blacks over here, whites over here." I wrote an apology for the city council, which passed unanimously, asking for forgiveness and racial reconciliation because of our past endorsement of slavery and segregation. I was an activist in many different directions. Most of the people of Annapolis respected me. I had, you know, whenever you do anything that's right, you do create some enemies. I decided, well, I've done okay as alderman. I think I'll run for mayor. So I announced at the city dock, held a big rally. Several hundred people showed up to endorse me for mayor. It was cold. It was like minus 15 degrees. Still 150 people showed up, and they're shouting, "Sam for mayor, Sam for mayor." I laid out my platform, exactly what I would do to revive the city's economy and to bring more tourism into the city and to make Annapolis a better place in which to work and live. We had slick advertisements, professional. One night I'm sitting at home alone and someone calls me. I thought he was my friend. There are no friends in politics. He said, "Please come downtown. Please come to the the Ram's Head Bar and Tavern on the Main Street." I went. He said, there are 30 people here. They're supporting you for mayor. Come and encourage them. So I went downtown. I walked in the door and everybody's shouting, "Sam for mayor, Sam for mayor, Sam for mayor." And of course, you know how that made me feel. Wow, this is incredible. I'm such a good person. These people love me. But you see, he had made an agreement with the bartender. The bartender was to put a glass of Coca-Cola with a shot of vodka in front of me every 20 to 30 minutes. And they knew I never bought alcohol and took it to my house. I never drank when I was alone. But if I was with other people and they're slapping me on the back and they're lifting their drinks, I would lift mine. I started drinking at 7 o'clock at night and finished around 10:30 in the evening. Every 30 minutes, Coke and vodka. By 10:30, I was so drunk, I could hardly walk. I'm staggering around the bar, cursing, swearing, speaking vulgar words to men and women, touching people improperly. At 11 o'clock, the same person who invited me to that bar, he said, "Come on, Sam, you need to get some fresh air. Let's go." He was laughing and slapping me on the back. We went upstairs, he opened the door, and I walked out to 3 TV cameras pointed at me. And the reporters, "Hey, Alderman Sam, you think this is good behavior for somebody who wants to be mayor of Annapolis? Do you think what you're doing is a good example to the kids in our city?" Oh, of course it wasn't. And of course I wasn't a good example. I couldn't have been elected dog catcher after that evening. I went running off. I pushed the cameras away and cursing, swearing, running to my car. I jump in the car and I pull out in the street. I'm zigzagging all over the place because I'm drunk. It's a wonder I didn't kill somebody. I finally made it home. I don't know how. I don't even remember driving home. Monday morning, the police knocking on my door. "Alderman Sam, can we come in?" I said, "Of course, come in." We sat in the living room. And they said, "Alderman Sam, do you remember where you were Friday night?" And I said, "Yeah, I was at Ram's Head Tavern." "Do you remember what you were doing, what you were saying?" I said, "I can't remember a lot, but I know it wasn't good." They showed me a piece of paper. Somebody had signed a complaint against me. It eventually went to court. I spent 2 days in jail. Now the TV cameras are following me into jail and out of jail. Let me say, 10:30 that evening was the last drop of alcohol I ever drank. That was May 14, 2009. And the subsequent 2 days in jail, and all the negative press that was on the news every 30 minutes, was the best thing that ever happened to me. You see, man plots, he plans. The Quran says God, Allah, is a much better planner and a much better plotter. I went into extreme depression for 2 years. I wasn't able to work. I was suffering from what they call post-traumatic stress syndrome, in and out of psychiatric hospital, on drugs, dealing with depression and suicidal tendencies. I didn't know what to do. My wife stood by me, writing letters to the newspaper and trying to help. But it was a very difficult time in my life. I couldn't think, I couldn't drive, I couldn't do anything right. Then came some Quaker Christians. They walked into my life. They were all from my section of the city that I represented on the city council. And they said, "We just want to hold a dinner with you once a week in our home. Just ask you questions. Not tell you anything, just ask questions." And they would ask questions like, "How many times have you been out of your home this week?" And I would say, "Well, I haven't been out at all." "Well, don't you think it would be a good idea to get out of the house? Can you commit to going out of the house a couple of times a week? Can you do this? How are you doing financially? What about work? Have you been able to find a job?" I applied to JCPenney's department store. They refused to hire me. I looked to be a cashier at a service station. They said I was too educated. They would train me and I would leave. The bank's knocking on my door. Your house is being foreclosed on. And Shaitan coming to me, whispering in my ear, "You're a bad husband. You're a bad father. Give up. Just go kill yourself." And I thought so seriously about it. I even plotted, because I had $100,000 in life insurance. If I could just make it look like an accident, then my wife and my daughter could collect my life insurance. But God and these Quakers held on to me. Then walked into my life Safi Kaskas, a Lebanese American Muslim. He was working on a project involving Quran. He was from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And he came to me and he said, "I understand you went to 3 different Christian graduate schools, that you studied Christian theology, you studied the Bible." I said, "Yes." He said, "I want you to come with me to Saudi Arabia." I laughed at him. Saudi Arabia, it's a Muslim country. He said, "Yes, we're working on a project involving Quran. We would like for some Christian to come and read it and tell us if you understand what is there in the Quran." I said, "That's it, just go and read Quran?" He said, "Yes." So I agreed to go. There was nothing else I could do. Every other door was shut. I agreed to go and live in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and to sit and read the Quran at night. And every morning I would sit with a group of other Muslim brothers, scholars, and I would say, "Wouldn't it be better if you wrote it this way? Or perhaps this would be better understood if you said it this way." And I would suggest new wording. Sometimes they would agree with me, but sometimes they wouldn't agree. And they say, "No, we said it this way for a reason." And then they would explain it to me. This lasted 3 years. It was like getting a PhD, a doctoral degree in Islamic studies. After being there just 6 months and working on this project, I asked Dr. Safi if it would be okay for me to go to a mosque. I wanted to be with people who were praying. And he wouldn't say yes, he wouldn't say no, he would just say, "Not yet, not yet." Finally, I gave up on Dr. Safi. I walked down the street to Masjid Taqwa, and I started knocking on the door. I knew I couldn't go to Mecca or Medina, but maybe I shouldn't go in a mosque. But I stood there knocking and knocking and knocking. I wasn't going to leave till somebody came to the door. Finally, Shafiq Zubair, who was a muaddin, and he was the muazzin from Burma. He was a Rohingya Muslim. He came to me and he said, "May I help you?" And I said, "Yes, my name is Samuel. I'm a Christian from the United States. Is it okay to come inside the mosque?" And he said, "Yes, yes." He reached out and hugged me and he led me into the mosque. I sat in the back in a folding chair just like this, and I just watched people standing, bowing, making sujood, face prostrating themselves to the floor, and saying words in Arabic that I didn't understand. After 3 days, going to the mosque all 3 days, 5 times a day, I said to Shafi, "Can you teach me to pray like a Muslim?" He said, "Of course." And he taught me Al-Fatiha. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu my whole life was changed, especially when it came to two words at the beginning of almost every surah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. I didn't understand the words, I was just memorizing sounds. But as I memorized the sounds, I would go back and look in this English translation of the Quran that I was working on, and I would come to Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. God, the most merciful. God, the one who freely distributes forgiveness upon all who believe and request. You see, these words are also in the Old Testament and the New Testament of the Bible. God, the most merciful. My life, I fell on my face, weeping and crying, and begging God for forgiveness because my sins were many. I'm very happy. A few years later, I came to Dr. Muhammad Al-Hajj Hussein, Taj's father. He worked in environmentalism. I considered myself an environmentalist, and he invited me to their home for dinner. When I got there, Dr. Muhammad said he had 6 sons. 5 of them were sitting at the table. I said, "Mashallah, Dr. Muhammad, 6 sons." I said, "This is incredible. I only have one child, a daughter. I love her very much, but I've always wanted a son. You've got 6. I said, I was not joking. I said, "Give me one of yours." He told me, he said, "Take Jesus. Take Isa, Jesus." Then Jesus and I started organizing Muslim Voice for Peace and Reconciliation, an organization that would reach out to Muslims around the world who are having problems, who are being persecuted because of their faith. Just as I was working on behalf of Christians and Muslims and Jews through Christian Solidarity International, we felt now that I should do it in the name of Islam. Christian Solidarity International. Now, Muslim Voice for Peace and Reconciliation. Asa and I have been to over 50 countries speaking about Islam and doing dawah to non-believers. Now we have another program, a dawah program for Muslims, reaching out to Muslims who jumped off the straight path because we realized this was a great need. Maybe you know of Muslims here who are no longer praying, who are no longer reading Quran, reciting Quran. When I went to, this was a surprise to me. I just thought all Muslims do the right things. Because as I got to know Islam more traveling in Oslo, Norway, ran into a guy on the street. He's got needle tracks up and down his arm. He's doing heroin. He could hardly see. He was partially blind. He was only 20 years old. I said, "Dear friend, what's your name?" He said, "Muhammad." In Saudi Arabia, Asa and I work at Bremen prison. We've met hundreds of teenagers in Bremen prison. They're so happy to hear an American talking. They come and they gather around me in the prison. They're infatuated with the United States. They want to be with an American. They're in prison because of drugs and alcohol and stealing to get drugs and alcohol. Hundreds, probably across Saudi Arabia, thousands of teenagers. I go to a restaurant. I ask them, "Why are you doing this?" "Oh, we saw it in an American movie. We thought it would be cool." And I tell them, "I love America. It's my country. But not everything is good about America. You have to be able to understand the difference between right and wrong." I go to a restaurant, very famous fast food restaurant in Jeddah called Al Baik. Has anybody been to eaten Al Baik chicken? It's very good. Alhamdulillah, is it good? I sit down at a table and all these teenagers start gathering around me because they've seen me on Saudi TV. They're calling me, Uncle Sam, can we sit with you? Eventually, the conversation gets around to, Uncle Sam, where do you live? I say, I live at the masjid down the street, Masjid Taqwa. The mosque, that mosque where I was knocking on the door, they built an apartment for me next to the imam. And I said, come and pray with us, just 2 blocks away. No. Why are you saying no? Why don't, you're Muslim, you were born Muslim, yes, but I don't believe in God. These are Saudi teenagers. It's everywhere in the world today. The most important dawah we're doing is to Muslims. Pray for us. I wish Asa were here. He's speaking in another mosque tonight. We've been dividing up. His brother Taj is here with me. But we're going to have a table out near the exit area. We're going to be giving away some Dawah t-shirts. Yeah. Okay, Taj, just can you show them the shirt, please, on the back?
And on the back it says, "My great love for Jesus led me to Islam." We have another yellow one that has Salam, peace, in three languages, Arabic, English, Hebrew, because we also go to Jerusalem to talk to Jews about us.
Okay, and Taj reminded me I need to tell you about 2 projects that we're working on. One is in Jerusalem. The Jews have 17 museums in Jerusalem for the 5 million religious tourists coming to the Holy Land every year. Christians have 30 very professional, high-tech museums with videos and movies and IMAX cinema. Muslims have nothing. And we've decided to build the first 3 on behalf of Islam. The first one is already, the building's been purchased. Building permits have been approved by the Israeli government. We're doing this through an Israeli nonprofit Dawah organization that's the only one in Israel. It's right next to Al-Aqsa. And this museum, inshallah, God willing, will open by the end of this year. The second project we're working on, which we believe is even more important, we're working on projects all over the world. We do this in collaboration with other agencies, organizations. But the most important thing we're doing right now is in Washington, D.C., establishing the international headquarters of Muslim Voice for Peace and Reconciliation, which brings me to the reason of this incredible 3-month road trip throughout the United States. We're here to inform American Muslim leaders, and we've met with probably 40 Muslim leaders here in the United States. We've been trying to locate office space in Washington, D.C. We've been speaking in mosques all over Saudi Arabia all over the United States. Traveled to 25 states so far. We've got more traveling to do. We're going to drive from here to Chicago, then to Texas, and then throughout Ontario, Canada. The purpose for this trip is to inform American Muslims about Muslim Voice for Peace and Reconciliation, what we're doing in various parts of the world, what our vision is for the future, and to to let people know, in Saudi Arabia, as of 3 years ago, it was illegal to give any money to organizations working outside of Saudi Arabia. So all money for Muslim Voice for Peace and Reconciliation was cut off. Not just for us, but hundreds of other organizations. If you go to Saudi Arabia today and ask for money for a mosque in United States or any other part of the world, they'll tell you no. It's illegal. We've gone to the Ministry of Islamic Affairs in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, the capital. They've given us a letter saying you're a great organization. We fully endorse everything you're doing, but we can't raise money in Saudi Arabia. You can't open a bank account here. So they told us, go to the United States and let American Muslims know what you're doing. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization recognized by the US IRS. All gifts to Muslim Voice for Peace and Reconciliation are tax deductible. But they're only tax deductible if people give and support the organization. So we're trying to make, we've raised about $40,000 in the last 3 months, but we have to have 300,000 by December. If you know of any businessman, if you know of any nonprofit organization, foundation, or mosque that might be able to support us through their zakat funding, because we're zakat eligible, please let us know and try to set up a meeting for us with them. We're going to be here 3 or 4 more days. We have a long ways to go. I'm grateful for all the young people working with me like Asa, Jesus, Taj, and many others who are working in different parts of the country and world on behalf of Muslim Voice for Peace and Reconciliation. We're going to be outside at the Dawah table and would welcome any questions you might have. Come to us and talk to us there. I'll still be there and I'll be drinking water. Thank you. God bless you all. Thank you, Imam, dear brother, for allowing us to have this time tonight.
We thank our guest tonight for the wonderful motivational talk and for his excellent work. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help them and support them and give them more strength. If anybody has any questions for Brother Samuel, please. Yes. Okay. We're going to hand the mic to them and they can ask.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your story. I think people like you truly make this country great. May Allah continue to bless you and bless the humanity so you continue to do the great work. Indeed, Allah had His plans. I think you were very lucky to get out of jail in 2 days when they were looking for 11 years, I believe, at the time. You share your story about going to Saudi Arabia and reading and learning Quran, but you haven't shared that. What was the turning point where you took the Shahada and then actually practicing Islam? What led you to that?
People often ask me, when did you become Muslim? And I tell them, my mother taught me to be a Muslim when I was 3 years old. People ask me, when did you take Shahada and why did you do it? I did it in June 2012. I arrived in Saudi Arabia in December 2011. So about 6 months later, I said Shahada. I did it at the Islamic Education Foundation in Alhambra, part of Jeddah. I went there. Dr. Sadiq Malki led me in saying Shahada. Why did I do it? Because the love of the people in Saudi Arabia for me and their concern for me. It was a real sincere love and appreciation for me. opened my eyes and my heart to understand the words of my mother. Sami, Sami, Sami. When you're older, you have to pray to the God of Abraham. There's only one God. That night I said Shahada at Islamic Education Foundation. Dr. Sadiq Malki, who's now remains one of my best friends, professor of political science at King Abdulaziz University. He put me in his car. He took me to Mecca. I said, Dr. Sadiq, the main thing I want to see is the Kaaba, because it was built by Ibrahim, restored by Ibrahim and Ishmael, his son. I said, please take me. We passed through at least 100,000 people inside the Haram, the Grand Mosque. We got to an opening where I could see the Kaaba, and I fell on my face sobbing. The words of my mother going through my ears. Sami, 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 you have to pray to the God of Abraham. There's only one God. I realized that the words of my mother had been fulfilled, and I also realized that the words of Prophet Muhammad, who said, peace and blessings be upon him, he said, heaven lies at the feet of our mothers. It certainly did in my case. So are there any other questions? I'm sorry?
Last name.
My last name is Shropshire. It comes from Shropshire, England. Joseph Shropshire immigrated to the state of Maryland in 1645. We're descendants of Joseph Shropshire. He came as a Christian missionary to the American Indians. Now one Shropshire is returning to Shropshire, England, which is the home of a very famous Daya, Abdurrahim Green. I go there often, and I go as a missionary from the United States for Islam. 5 churches in Shropshire have been turned into mosques, and a 6th building belonging to the city government is now a major Islamic center. So we're very grateful for what God is doing even there.
I just wanted to add the one word he's saying in Arabic, da'i or da'iya, means the caller onto Islam. I just wanted to clarify if anybody doesn't understand.
Any other questions quickly? Thank you for letting me be here with you tonight. God bless you all. Pray for us as we continue our journey. If you have the ability to come to the table, please come. We'd like to give you a free shirt. I don't know how many we have left, but Taj will be there. Corona will be standing by the table to tell you about shirts and to accept any contributions you may want to make. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jazakumullah khair. We'd like to thank our guests tonight one more time, and please do support them. We encourage you to please buy the shirts and buy what they have and support the organization. Jazakumullah khair. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Inshallah, we're going to break right now for Isha Salah. We'll have Isha at the regular time at 9 o'clock.